Hey guys, we're going to continue with chapter 10 of Song for a Whale. By the time I got home from Grandma's, a reply in my comment on the sanctuary's post was waiting for me. Great point, Iris. We were wondering about that too. But we think Blue 55 wouldn't sing at all if he were deaf. Sometimes he swims long distances to other whales, so it seems like he's following their sounds. Perhaps he has something like tone deafness, or he can't tell he isn't singing like the others, or for some reason he's not able to produce the same sounds. Sometimes he's quiet for weeks at a time, and we worry that he's given up or that he's no longer alive. But then he starts singing again. It seems like he keeps trying to communicate, but there's nothing out there that understands his songs. So he wasn't deaf, he just couldn't match the calls of the whales around him. Before reading the rest of the message, I checked the expedition team's photos again to see who had replied to me. The name at the top of the reply read Andy Riviera. Andy was a woman in the photo who had tried to tag Blue 55 the year before. The picture of the team posing together in their blue shirts showed a better view of her. Her long black hair was pulled into a ponytail, and she looked like she was laughing. The sun or the cold wind had turned the cheeks of her brown face rosy. We might never find out why whales sing, but as a scientist, I'm always thinking and looking for answers. Why Blue 55 sings when no other whale answers back is an even bigger mystery. Maybe he just likes to sing, and it doesn't matter that it's an unusual song. A lot of people think Blue 55 is lonely, but I wonder, do we believe that because we are the ones who are lonely? Short chapter. Chapter 11. Miss Sheldon didn't forget about the apology thing. She told Miss Kahn I had to apologize to Nina before returning to class. Mr. Charles helped me come up with what to tell her, even though it was Nina's fault. Sorry you bothered me so much I had to shove you wasn't going to work. Mr. Charles walked with me to Nina's desk to interpret, sorry I hurt you. She smiled a little and signed something that looked like, hi. All right, Mr. Charles corrected while biting his lip. As soon as I got home that afternoon, I raced upstairs. Finally, I'd have my radios back. Some of them, anyway. Enough to work on. For a while, I stood in my bedroom door and looked at the few items that were back on the shelves where they belong. First, I had to put my workshop back in order. Mom had returned the tools and parts, but didn't know where anything belonged. The Admiral set was too heavy for me to drag anything into my room, so I sat on the closet floor with my screwdriver. I opened the back panel, and I sat there for a minute and stared at the dust-covered parts. The work would go faster if I didn't have my thick leather gloves on, but I told my parents I'd always wear them. Unplugged or not, radios I worked on weren't as safe as new models. Back when the old stuff was made, it was your own dumb fault if you died of electrocution. At first, I could tell that there were at least a couple of vacuum tubes that weren't any good. No obvious cracks, but the cloudy white coating inside the glass tubes lets me know if it was time to toss them. They look pretty on a Christmas tree, but I'd throw them into the recycling bin. Mom had told me enough already with the busted vacuum tube ornaments. Even so, that old set turned out to be worth all the trouble. When I finished cleaning and testing all the tubes, I had 5 good ones. No guarantee they'd fit into the Zenith radio, though. Sometimes parts like that looked like they'd match up perfectly, turned out to not fit at all. But it worked. The new tubes slid into place like they belonged there. Before screwing on the back panel of the Zenith, I checked everything one more time, and then plugged it in. Then I stood there admiring the radio. Whenever I was pretty sure a radio was fixed, I liked to wait a minute before turning it on. It was like closing a really good book just before the final page to make it last. Now to check. I turned on the radio for a few seconds and then switched it off and stepped back. No smoke, so I hadn't blown anything up. Nothing in the air but the smell of old radio, my favorite smell. It reminded me of attics and campfires and the antique books in Mr. Gunner's store. I'd read that the smell was just old radio parts and dust warmed up by the electricity. But it was more than that. It was like the radio was remembering every home it had ever been in. I reached over to turn it back on and then placed my hand on the speaker. Static hummed against my fingers. Almost there. The slight turn of the knob and the vibration smoothed out. There was music. Usually I didn't think about what the music sounded like. But right then, with my hand on the radio, I wondered if any note of the song vibrating the speaker sounded like Blue 55. At my computer, I searched for more about the whale. A website about whale migration came up with maps showing where the different whale species swam throughout the year. A lot of whales were hanging out around California or Alaska for the summer since that's where the food was. When it got colder, they'd swim back to Hawaii or Mexico or some other warm place. The most interesting part was how the scientists made those maps. A few whales had trackers on them, like the one that Andy from the sanctuary had tried to put on Blue 55, but the scientists now know where most of the whales were because of underwater microphones in the oceans all over the world. They listened to the songs and knew what kind of whales sang them. Then they'd add it to the map showing a humpback pod in Massachusetts or a minke whale in Norway. The whales' songs were like footprints they left in the ocean. This worked even if the whales were far away. Sound traveled in the water, further in the water than in the air, so a whale song could be heard for hundreds of miles away, maybe more. Blue 55 had a map all of his own. He traveled the same water as all the other whales, but at different times. Sometimes there were gaps in his route, when no microphone picked up his song. Either he wasn't singing then, or the other noise in the ocean drowned out his calls. A dotted blue line on the map showed the best guess of where he was. Sometimes he took a completely different route, one that no other whale ever did. The lines on the other whales' maps were smooth, curving up or down coastlines. Blue 55 took a more jagged route. He'd start swimming one way, and then for some odd reason change direction and go off to the side or back the way he had just been. I traced the blue line with my finger. What are you looking for? Below each map was a recording of the whale songs. When I clicked on the sound file, colored lines on a graph rose and fell, showing the volume and frequency of the song that played. I raced downstairs to bring up the website on Mom's computer since it had speakers plugged into it. With the volume turned up, I rested my hand on the speaker and clicked on the sound file. The low calls of the normal whales vibrated more strongly against my hand than 55's did. It didn't feel like a huge difference, though. I wish I could understand the songs and figure out what they were saying, or at least why they couldn't talk to one another. I couldn't imagine trying for so long to reach out to somebody else when there was never a reply. Either he was still waiting for someone to answer back, or hearing his own song was enough for him. With my hand on the computer speaker, I closed my eyes as the song fluttered against my fingers. This was different from anything I'd ever felt through a radio speaker before. Not like any other music, and not like talking either. A steady vibration tickled my palm as Blue 55 sang out in a long call that seemed like it would never end. And then the speaker pulsed when he switched to short bursts of sounds. While keeping one hand on the speaker, I placed the other over my heart to feel the matching rhythms of my heartbeat and the whale song. On another website, I found a picture of Blue 55 taken by a photographer with an underwater camera. It looked like one of the images from the video that Miss Amandia had showed us in class. A profile of his face with the black oval of his eyes centered on the photo. It hadn't been so long ago that I'd first seen him in that video, but it felt like I had always known him. I clicked print on the photo so that I could tack it to my wall. While the printer ran, I swiveled the chair around to the window and watched Tristan and his friends play basketball in the driveway. My eyes darted from one to the other, trying to grab any scrap of conversation as they dribbled and passed the ball and shot baskets. They all laughed and high-fived their friend Pablo over something he had said. Tristan aimed for the hoop, but then started laughing again, doubled over this time. I turned back to the printer. The guys were probably laughing about something dumb anyway. When I clicked on the sound file again, one hand felt the song playing through the speaker, and the other hand held a picture of who was singing. And that's where we'll stop for this time. So come back next time to hear chapter 12 and beyond. And I will see you guys later. Bye.